Good morning, everybody. I'm so happy you're here. And while some of you are sitting down, I'm going to make an unusual request. Would the men here please stand up? The men who came to this panel. 1, 2, 3. You're up. You got to come in now, because... Okay. I just want to commend the 5 men who came to a panel on women in the workplace. Thank you very much. We need you here. I wish there were more of you. I've been coming to this conference for many years and have often noticed the dearth of women, and I see more and more of you here in recent years, and I think that's a great thing. So I'm really glad that you came here to listen to this fantastic panel. And my name is Liz Willen. I am the editor-in-chief of the Hechinger Report. We're a nonprofit news outlet based in New York City, and we write about inequality and innovation in education. So I've often learned a lot from coming to these conferences over the years. First time I'm actually moderating a panel, and I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves just briefly. We have all their bios, and talk about why they're here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ruth White, and I am the president of InsideTrack. And InsideTrack is a company that is powered by coaching. So we help students along their journey from high school through college, graduation, and then career readiness in order to see their full potential to reach their goals. And I'm really excited to be here today to learn from all of you and my fellow panelists.
Hi, everybody. Jessica Hinkle with Strada Education Network. We're a social impact organization that is focused on getting beyond completion and improving pathways between education and employment. And we do that in a number of different ways through our research, philanthropy, strategic investments, which is the area that I oversee, as well as our wholly owned affiliates, which include InsideTrack.
Hi, everybody. My name is Terah Cruz, and there's a slight edit on the agenda here. I'm no longer with Guild Education. Currently unemployed, but as of Monday, will be the CEO of ReUp Education. ReUp Education is a platform company that reaches adult learners wherever they are in their education journey. Many of them we work with right now are stop-outs from college. And we support them with coaching and services to help them wayfind and find their way back into college or find their way back into education and to a better career. Excited to chat?
Good morning, I'm Rhonda Broussard, pronouns she, hers. I'm founder and CEO of Beloved Community. Beloved is a national nonprofit based in New Orleans. We are a pro-Black, pro-queer, pro-women-led organization, and that permeates the way that we do our work, which is supporting regions through sustainable practices for equity, racial equity, and economic equity. And what that looks like in practice, supporting leadership teams with their long equity journey for interpersonal and institutional change, managing cohorts and communities of practice around the country, particularly the Mid-South and the Midwest, developing research practices and applied research tools for our partners to use and for broader community, and then also launching a software platform for organizational equity audits, professional development equity audits, equity studies, and multi-year equity work plans.
Thanks, everyone. So now you know our panelists, and what we have in common, all of us, I think, is not only caring deeply about how women are treated and promoted and how we are supported in the workplace, but all of us in our work care deeply about the future of higher education and have seen so often how hard it is for working parents who are struggling to get degrees, for non-traditional students, and for all students, and the pandemic has just made it so much harder. At the same time, it's odd in some ways that we even need a panel like this, and I have to give credit to Ruth. It was her idea based on, we saw, a lot of you might have seen an article in the New York Times of a woman sitting on the floor screaming with a toddler and a computer. If that sounds familiar, that's what life was like for many of us this last year. Ruth came up with the panel idea, and we just think it's really important to discuss these issues. But Ruth, tell us why you think we need to be doing a better job of supporting women both in higher education and the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those two issues are tied together because we know that there's a lot of women that go to college and graduate but they get into the workforce, and then we have so many women who leave the workforce. And the pandemic has made that problem 10 times worse, with women being much more affected than men during the pandemic, and Black women even more so. So it's a compounded issue. And what happens is we lose great talent. We lose individuals who could contribute to our organizations in unique ways, and we watch those individuals make choices that really aren't choices because they aren't supported in the workplace. So whatever we can do to make sure that women have the supports they need, both in higher education and then once they're in the workplace, so that they can balance all the things happening in their life, and I say balance only in quotes because I don't think balance ever really happens, but are able to make the decisions that are best for them, then we have the most vibrant, diverse workplaces that we can have, which will lead for better results for all of society.
Great. And Jessica, who has 3 children, ages 14, 12, and 9, and do not even discuss whether the schools are going to be reopening again in the fall. She cannot handle that question. It's just not going to, it's not okay. But at Strada, she's been working at home for many years remotely, even while others, before all of us, were forced to do that. And are there lessons from your own workplace that you think could be incorporated into the larger picture of higher ed?
I really think it's about just bringing your authentic self, your whole self to work. And, one of the things that I've always done, I've been working from home for many, many years, is I don't have a Zoom fake background because there's a lot of reality behind me. And so if I were to just fake it and pretend like I'm not turning around and swatting a kid to say, like, not now while I'm on Zoom, it would look like I had some sort of a tick, which I don't. But instead, I have a reality which is kind of, it definitely informs the rest of my life and the rest of the way that I engage with my colleagues and with a lot of the companies that I'm talking to. And I think that just in the seat that I'm in, where I'm investing in companies that are trying to improve pathways between education and employment, and also investing in fund managers that are trying to do the same thing, I think it's just really critical that I am not trying to pretend that I'm somebody I'm not, but being a female in this role and trying to ensure that, like, this seat is as important and important to recognize as not just a professional, but also everything else that I bring to bear. And I think that it's just really, like I said, it's bringing your whole self to work.
And Terah's about to start a new job, but has a lot of experience working with people who have had a hard time struggling to get through their education experience, and even have had some of that experience yourself. So tell us a little bit about how we can do a better job of supporting women in the workplace, and how you intend to do that now that you're the CEO of a new company.
I've been leading teams that have been majority female for the past 5 years. And I want to second something that Jessica said and actually build off of it. Bringing your whole self to work, I think what it does is it actually creates space for others to do the same. I have women on my team, my former team at Guild, who were subjugated to very small positions because they had kids or they had kids with disabilities. And all of a sudden they went from this sort of career track that was very much sort of going up to being delegated to some part-time position on the side where, their bosses didn't have to worry about, their other competing things. I've had the most luck on actually hiring women like that. I've got my best performers out of them because I created space. I created the space that I would have wanted for myself. I was a stop out myself and actually found my way back to college in my 20s. And I've had leaders over the years that just allowed me to be myself at work. I think if we can do that for the women in our workplace, allow them to work the hours that they are. COVID has given us this realization that all these sacred cows about the way we work, they're all stupid. Some of my highest performers are doing their work at 1 a.m. in the morning because she was up taking care of a kid at night, and she got a little bit of work in. I think bringing our whole selves as leaders in and showing them that we're flawed, that we're swatting a kid. I'm not swatting a kid, but I'm swatting a dog. In the background, that we take time for ourselves, that we take vacation. allows them to do the same. And that's the thing that I'm thinking about, in my past positions, but also moving forward. Like, how do I show up every day, and what signals am I sending to all the other women on my team?
Yeah, role models are really, really important in something like this. And I think over the years, many of us who've had male bosses have not seen that kind of emphasis on work-life balance or understanding. At least I have not in my experience. And now I'm at an organization led by women. And you said last night that only one person had left your organization. And it's been similar to mine. Very little turnover when you have somebody who says, you know what, it's cool to have a family, and you can get your work done when you can get your work done, and you don't have to lie about the publishing party or the kindergarten graduation. You can just go and make up the time. Imagine that. And Rhonda, how about for the work, how do you model that in your organization and for the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so we started off with some of these similar principles, right? This is my third nonprofit, so I'm like, how do we build a better nonprofit practice from the start? And so early on named, okay, here's unlimited paid time off. How do we really make it super transparent for folks? We expect you to take time to care for yourself and care for your family. How do we make our calendars transparent? So my calendar will say, when I get back from this ASU+GSV conference, I'm sleeping. Don't talk to me.
Oh, what a good idea.
Right? Like, because that's what I need to be doing and not being in the next meeting. And so, like, building in some of that transparency, but one of the things that we experienced in the first year of Beloved, we were looking back at our data, and even with an unlimited paid time off policy and all of this transparency, folks averaged, any guesses, how many days off for vacation rest? A little higher, 7. So we averaged 7 days off for vacation, rest, relaxation. We averaged 14 days off for medical care, family care. And I skewed the statistics because I had been diagnosed with breast cancer, so I'm like, these numbers really aren't that average because my numbers are higher. But what it led us to as an organization, and at the time of all women, to have the conversation about why people weren't taking more time off and why they weren't taking more time off for rest and for their own care, their own space to grow and develop. And what I heard from the other women on our team was, I know when I'm out, that's going to create extra burden on you. I know when I'm out, that's going to put more work on your work stream, and I don't want to do that to our team. And so we decided to take a collective sabbatical. And so planned out what this would look like, manage expectations with our funders, with our partners, with our clients, with our own calendars. We engaged a holistic wellness coach to coach us through, as a team, what it meant to take intentional rest and not vacation, intentional rest and not doing the next house project or building a fence for your dad or taking your kids on their college tours, and identifying what were the barriers to our own rest in our lives. Sometimes we are the barrier to rest in our own lives. And then after we took that sabbatical in February, and it was a high point in COVID. And so I think if we'd started this practice at any other time, certainly pre-COVID, folks would have been tempted to travel. And if any of you have kids, you know traveling with the children is not rest. But because it was COVID, everyone stayed home and in my own family, my partner was still working at her regular virtual corporate job. My kids were still in their regular virtual school. So I got to wake up every day of sabbatical, y'all, and just sit down. And if that meant falling asleep at 10 a.m. and then waking back up at lunch, that was lovely. And like watching bad TV and doing daytime dance classes.
And admitting it.
Yes.
Imagine
and
that.
it worked, right? And in that same year, we did that. We started sabbatical last year. Our revenue doubled, our staff doubled. Like, it didn't cost us anything organizationally to invest in the practice. And now we have a
I love
way to talk about
that
it.
because I also had a boss who would take the red eye home like I'm doing tomorrow and then go straight to the office because he needed to model the importance of showing up. And I was like, don't you want to get some sleep after the red eye? I mean, you feel like crap after that plane trip. You don't want to go back in an office, and nobody really wants to be around anyone who's been on the red eye in the office either, but of course that was when we were going to offices. But that's, to me, somewhat revolutionary that you're saying you can acknowledge it. You can own it. You can say, I'm watching crappy TV. I mean, I just think that I've never heard too many men say that they're willing to do that in their workplace. And also, we have a time right now where there's a search for good talent, and if you want to keep good talent, I mean, I wonder if all of you think that if women start kind of demanding this sort of this kind of attitude and self-care and attention to other parts of your life being mattering, whether you think we'll have better employee retention and whether it'll be easy to hire folks?
I think absolutely, and I think definitely easier to hire because women are looking for organizations that will be supportive of their needs, and because we are at a point where talent is at a premium, and companies are having to put more effort into recruiting and into finding the best individuals for roles. They have to start looking at not just the benefits of health insurance and things like that, but the culture that they have at their organization and how they are supporting women within their culture so that they not only recruit them and retain them, but then also elevate them throughout the organization so that they are then ultimately being the creators of that culture and helping to set the path for the women that come after them.
Jessica, can you build on that a little bit?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, as Rhonda mentioned, what COVID really has done is it's also created more of a level playing field for the men that we work with to be able to be realistic about the fact that they've got kids who are running around next to them as well. And, I think that leaving that space for everybody to, as opposed to just like, okay, well, as a working parent, as a working mom, I can, be authentic and say that my kids are behind me. But now sort of leaving that space for all the men that I work with to also be more real and honest about what they're doing. And so, one of the things that I've found is just like kind of having in every conversation, trying to have one small connection that's about who you are as a person, not just about professionally. And not to totally derail a meeting, but just to be able to kind of meet people where they are in their lives, which is that they have other things going on. And so if we can all just be a little bit more honest about that, men and women, I think that we'll all just be able to move things forward together.
Yeah, two things here. I think on that point of just getting to know people where they are and like asking about who they are, sometimes it's as simple, even if you're really busy, at the end of the meeting, I just look at each of my team members and say, I appreciate you. Like, appreciate you, appreciate everything you bring. If you're really busy, just those few words just reminds people. You care about them, you care about the business, but you care about them as a human, because if they're a good human, if they're a solid human, that's good for business, just as you all saw. I think there's something to this too, that men, women, all of us have been stressed in the last year. And we talked about the signals that leaders send on how we show up. I think the thing I found is going the next few levels down, asking everybody, even the entry-level person on the team, to also send those signals, to also show up in that way. Because even if they and I learned early on when I started being a leader that my junior team members would stalk my calendar to determine like how they should actually approach their day. But they stalk each other's calendars too. And I think this is especially true of women. We look to others and go, what is she doing? Is she, you wore a jacket, should I wear a jacket? I did this this morning with my partner. I'm like, should I wear a jacket? Should I not wear a jacket? What does it mean? This is almost, this is the way we've been socialized. And this is especially true of women, but it's true of everybody. If everybody is thinking about the signal that they send, and you start to bake that into the culture. It's a little bit of laborious at first, but you start to bake that into the culture. Then when people ask for space, everybody else rallies to give it to them because they know they're gonna have to ask for it. This summer, 20% of my team at Guild was on maternity leave. No issues. The whole team rallied, people put in a lot of hard work, and as mothers started to come back from their maternity leave, people started to take long vacations. Yes. If they didn't, I did intrusive advising, and I reached out and was like, why aren't you not taking vacation? So I think there's these signals, we have to encourage it everywhere throughout the thing. It's not just about the leaders, it's about how everybody behaves. We have to bake it into our culture.
I think we need somebody on this panel who completely disagrees with all of us here.
Good luck. They're probably at work right now. But yeah. But one thing I wanted to follow with what Terah was saying is the one, if you've ever been to a Jay-Z concert, he ends the concert and turns the lights up And it's like, I appreciate you, Ma. Like, I saw you dancing all night. You knew the lyrics to all the songs. I like your outfit. Thank you for the sign. Happy birthday. I appreciate you. And that practice, like seeing him do this in a concert setting, helped me remember that you can always appreciate people, and that people always, that it means a lot when you actually see what they did and what they brought to the meeting, what they brought to the table. So I just wanted to echo that. But this piece about how you model that transparency in calendars, so it's like bring kids to school, pick kids up from school, sit at home and wait to see if it's raining, if I need to go pick the kids up from school. And then your team actually does see that. Like those things are real on my calendar. And so it signals, my kids are teenagers. It signals to our team members who have younger kids like, oh, okay, I have preschool visit day. I can put that on my calendar and everyone knows I'm in preschool visit. Or if this is a pickup window for me, you can talk to me on the phone. I can have an internal conversation with you, but I can't be on a client-facing meeting. Or my pickups with my son are sacred. And it's like, no, actually, I'm not going to talk to anyone. I'm just going to talk to him in pickup time, and we'll come back. And so, like, making space for people to name how that is, and then holding themselves accountable for the work. We have work to do, and there are ways that we get it done without having to silence those parts of ourselves, silence those parts of our life, and silence those parts of our families that really matter for how we get to show up. And we'll do it you talked about doing it at the end of the meeting. We have something to do called Warm Welcome, which is like the start of every meeting, both internally and with clients and partners, to say, like, how are we connecting as people before we jump into the business? We're going to get the business done. We're going to leave with our agenda items and the calendaring and the to-do list, et cetera. But how can we actually understand each other better in this space? And particularly because the work that we do is focused around equity, we're always tracking what's happening in the region, what's happening in the country, what's happening in the world. So yesterday was the anniversary of Michael Brown Jr.'s killing in St. Louis, which was the inspiration for me to start Beloved Community. When we go into a conversation on days where there's been a recent killing of a Black person by police, days where after the shooting in Atlanta, we're naming that for ourselves and making space for people to process, making space to say, do we need to reschedule this, right? We work with a lot of friends in Indianapolis when there was a shooting in the FedEx facility. Like, how do we start these conversations with the team in Indianapolis? Or how do we start conversations with the team in Ohio when a young Black girl was killed this spring? And so not pretending that the world isn't happening and that the only thing that matters is this meeting, and really naming at the top, how are people doing? And do we need space and time to process before we jump in?
This is pretty revolutionary for people who've been in the workforce for a long time, like I have, and it's music to many of our ears. In the news business, it was this kind of flexibility is impossible because of deadlines and everything else at traditional newspapers where I've worked. But in this new world that we're in, it's really great to see women leaders taking ownership of this and saying, you know what, this is how we're going to do things, and I'm going to be the example. One thing I do want to bring up, though, and I also would like to encourage a lot of audience questions, so I'm going to leave some time for that, is that I went to 2 panels yesterday on childcare, and it's so important, and I'm really happy that they had them here at ASU+GSV, because these kinds of things were not on the agenda many years ago, and now that they are. We can't have equitable workplaces when childcare is falling apart, and everyone is worried about this fall right now between virtual learning being a possibility again, not enough vaccinations, and also many of us aren't even going to be returning to workplaces at all. It's going to be virtual. So on the childcare piece of it, I think a lot about how to be fairer to people who don't have children. And I tell them, if you're bringing your pet to the vet, you can put that on the calendar too. I have to give equal, I mean, you also don't want to be so pro-child that other people who work for you, or guys who don't want to have children or aren't planning on it, or women who don't, might feeling resentful of all the moms in the office. And I've heard somebody complain that we're just way too much of a mommy culture. And that there can be a pushback on that. But I'm also wondering how you're all thinking about how we move forward in education and in our workplaces when we can't fix this childcare piece, because we have a crisis right now. People are quitting, they're not paid well enough. We heard this over and over again. We've written about it a lot at the Hechinger Report. And we can't solve the workplace if people can't get in the workplace because they don't have childcare. Do any of you, have any of you taken any kind of initiatives to make it easier for in your own workplaces or in education, either?
I can start. I wish I could say I had a solution, and if I had a solution, I'd probably be on the center stage. But I much prefer to be here with y'all. I will say I think it just starts with flexibility. Most of the women on my team have children. We've had a lot of babies. We celebrate the babies that come in, but I group and that type of flexibility for childcare and the same type of flexibility we bring to everybody. So we talk about childcare, we talk about the importance, we talk about recognizing people where they are and what pressures they have in their life, but we also sort of talk about it in a bigger picture. We all have pressures. Maybe it's not a child that you're taking care of. Maybe it's a parent. Many leaders right now are in that sandwich generation. So that person who may not want a child may have a parent at home, or they may have a sick dog, or they may have their own health issues, or any number of other things. So I think we have to be able to focus on how do we specifically provide resources for parents? But I think if we do start with that flexibility, and this is going to come back to COVID sort of is like giving us permission to do this, it starts there. If we can't start there, like we can't even start, we can't even get the conversation rolling.
And I would say that the flexibility piece really comes from an intersectional analysis of what's happening, right? So if we're understanding that employees who are parenting, who are caregiving, and we know the burden of caregiving tends to fall more squarely on women's shoulders. But if we understand what the burden is and we design some flexible workplace to respond to the burden, then it doesn't have to be about because you're a parent and you have young children or children who have additional needs, et cetera. It's you're providing for some flexible workspace because we know all of our people need it, and you apply it to whatever that need is in your life. That's how we can get to building some universal practices that allow folks to opt in the ways that they need it. And so thinking about from a small nonprofit perspective, what are the flexible schedules, what are the opportunities for your families to join you? If you get to decide if my child being with me is going to be helpful or not, but opportunities for your family to join you, opportunities for you to take all of the walk breaks with your dog, to spend time with your ailing parents, and again, be honest and clear with people about how you're spending the time. I think the biggest gift that we have is not having to hide that we are people, and that as people, we have caregiving responsibilities for folks. We just had in our July retreat review of what are our benefits? How do we start thinking about pie in the sky? Where do we want to grow benefits next? And even though our team at Beloved, we're 97% women, we aren't that many parents. I think we're only 4 or 5 parents on the team. And so the issues that parenting employees had were really different, and they shifted our conversation. And so every year we'll go back to the conversation and say, is it a child care credit? Is it, we do when you have a role where you have to travel a lot, a stipend for night care. It doesn't come up for us often, but if you have a single parent who has to travel for work, paying for nighttime nannies is a really different cost than your regular daycare. Identifying nighttime nannies for a 2-day work trip is different, and so creating a stipend for here's what it costs for you to have nighttime care for you to do a job that has 50% travel was one of the first things that we were able to do. And then apply that to pet sitting or to in-home care if you were caring for an older sibling who needed round-the-clock medical attention.
Either of you want to add to that?
Well, I would just add that I think in higher ed, you asked that also in the question, and I feel like there is an interesting dynamic happening with COVID impacting so much of the online learning now too. So even where there was childcare, which there wasn't enough to start with for moms on campuses, now you have those same moms and more at home with children and trying to go to school at the same time.
And that's going to create a completion crisis, isn't it?
Exactly, right. And some of them have had to leave the workplace because of that, and so funding's an issue. So while I don't have any brilliant answers to the problem, I think we have to dedicate resources, time, to support these students and to figure out solutions, and probably have to get more creative than we've been in the past about how to do that, and to honor the caregivers who are the ones supporting the children during this time, whether that's the mom trying to balance all this or whether that's a child care worker that have come, in to help.
Yeah, I think honoring the caregivers is really critical. I mean,
And paying them a decent wage.
absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to pretend like I'm actually doing all this myself. I'm not. I mean, I have a very supportive husband, and I also have a nanny, and she is incredibly, does everything. So I'm not going to lie.
Your life falls apart without her.
Yeah, yes, it does. But I think it's, I think that part of the way that I'm able to be and do what I do is because I have a really great support system. And I've also kind of modeled for my kids that I cannot do everything myself. Like, you need to talk to Daddy about this, and you need to talk to Cheryl about that, and you need to do this on your own. So, I think that that is, I think a cross that a lot of women bear is we're like, I'll just do it. So-and-so can't do it as well as I can. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to take care of it. And then it really becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where we develop a lot of resentment and frustration that we're doing everything, but then we insist on doing everything. So I'm telling you that I am trying not to do that, and yet I'm still like, this morning, I'll just take care of the soccer registration because obviously you can't do that. Like, now why am I doing this again?
They can never take care of that soccer registration. Do you want to add to that, Terah?
Yeah, I want to add one more thing. I think we talk about flexibility, recognizing where people are, the added benefits as your organization can do that. I think some of it too is recognizing that regardless of what the pressure is, it's time poverty that we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And time poverty, it's not the only solution to add flexibility. Sometimes actually take a look at how things are working within your organization. Is some of that bureaucracy and little things that people are checking off on the day, is that actually necessary? If I could just remove a few hours of BS from my employees' life during the day, where could they actually apply those hours? I think that is what I'm excited about over the next few years, because we've all experienced this high friction life over the last 16 months. How can we take a step beyond the flexibility and start to think about where are the frictions in my employees' lives, in my students' lives? We do a lot around the individual students, but how do we bring that into our companies as well and say, what can I stop doing to give you more time?
Right, and I think, again, that's what makes this panel unique, because we're living it on a personal level and thinking about it on a global level. And I just want to say the one thing that I found this year was, it was not on a personal level, it was a reporting level. I spent 3 months following a nursing student at a community college to find out she had 4 children. She had stopped out of college and she went back again, and she was determined to get her degree. And then she had COVID. Every single thing that could go wrong went wrong. And when I started, I didn't know if she was going to finish or not. And she did. She's now a nurse. She sent me a picture of her pin the other day. She's very excited. It was really fun to work on that story, and terrifying as well, thinking about her life during the pandemic. But I could see what saved her: on-site childcare at really high quality at a community college that also had a preschool. And it was, I keep thinking, I always want to think about what works, right? What's what we think about in education at the Hechinger Report. What works? What's going to make a difference? That was life-changing, 5 years of that center, and everyone in the center got to know her kids and rooted her on through her ceremony. That kind of support you can't replicate. And that they managed to keep that child care center open in the pandemic, which is really unusual. That hasn't happened. And so I'm afraid that we're going back into a fall where we're going to repeat a lot of this all over again. And we've thought about it so much, and we've learned some things, but we can't. The Delta's been very hard to fight. I would
Please
love.
don't say it. Don't.
I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say it
out loud.
Promise, Jessica, I wouldn't
Don't
say
say it out loud.
But I'm really hoping that some of you have some questions that you might want to direct to any of the individual panelists. It'd be better if you directed it to one, because I've been sort of taking turns just for ease. Yes, you're going to speak loud because I'm not allowed to hand you the mic. Yep. Well, I saw your hand first.
So, my first thing I just wanted to say quickly to Jessica, my 15-year-old daughter emailed me yesterday and asked me to set up a hair appointment for her from Iowa. And I'm like, you can go online and set up your own hair appointment. Yes, Mom. But my question is for Rhonda. I wanted to ask you about those work welcomes, how you do those. If you could just give us a little more detail on that, because I think that would really set the tone for the meeting, because a lot of times we go into meetings and people just come
Yeah, absolutely. So the warm welcome is the responsibility of the person who called, scheduled, is leading and facilitating that meeting. Oftentimes we'll have them designed to complement what the content of the meeting is about. Sometimes they're local, culturally relevant questions. A lot of times they're jokes, like we fall on the floor laughing, deep belly conversations in the warm welcomes. And so you can look at it as a, I can't even think of an example right now. Here's a great example. And I'll give this example because Nikki's here. Nikki's working on a project with us where we're doing an online course. We have an online course and we're translating to 5 languages, and she's managing that project for us. And so we were having a meeting, and the warm welcome question was, give an example of a time where you made a pretty serious and comical error in language or in a travel experience. And then we went around and everyone told stories. I'm like, here's all the ways that like my inappropriate street Spanish has gotten me in trouble in business meetings. Right? And it's light, it's related, it gives you a chance to know something about the other people in the room, and then you go into agenda.
I have a question right here, sorry. And then I'll ask the man in the room. How many are there left? 3? Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Just count.
This is for Rhonda as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about intentional rest and the components of it?
Yeah, I would love to talk with you more after the session as well. So what we identified in preparing for our sabbatical was the space for a holistic coach to help us think through, like I said, the barriers to rest, what we thought the benefits of rest would be, right? There's a lot of rhetoric that the benefit of rest is increased productivity. And we're like, how do we even counter that idea from a business perspective, right? The benefit of rest is rest. As someone who's had like 3 to 4 months of rest in the past year, I know as soon as I get back on the computer, my shoulders hunch up, my jaw tightens, I get the headache, right? Like a month of rest does not help that dissipate when I get back in. And so what our holistic coach helps us do in preparation for sabbatical, helping us identify the psychological barriers for ourselves, the pressures that we put on ourselves and the pressures we put on society. We're mostly people of color on our staff. And so what it means for us to be constantly producing and constantly caring for other people and shepherding other people in their process, right? And recognizing how that depletes our resource, physical resource, mental resource, emotional resource. And so coming back from sabbatical, we still work with the coach to say, how did it go, right? We have rest accountability partners. This is what I think rest is going to look like for me. This is how I'm going to recognize when my barriers or when my own self-talk about, you don't deserve this. You should be doing something else. And you can hear, I don't know how many of you grew up with grandparents who are like, you're shiftless, you're lazy, like these stereotypes that other people have of Black community, that other people have of brown community, and that sometimes we hear within our own communities, that you didn't work hard enough to get this. And so we really do the psychological conversation around what work and rest, what the relationship to work and rest is. And you don't earn rest in our organization. And then our coach works with us individually and once a month to say, what are some of the micro practices of rest? Now when you're back in your full regular work swing, how can you schedule your day differently so that you have time for rest in the day? How can you schedule a shorter meeting so that you can take 15 minutes in between and go repot a plant or have some one-on-one time with a kid, lay down. I'm the queen of like an 8-minute nap. Let me set this timer. 8 minutes in between the meeting and I'm good, right? But like she literally had to coach us in how do we make that present for ourselves and then how do we hold ourselves accountable to it.
I have a question right here.
So very quickly, in essence, but in hybrid work, so like many CEOs, and I've got 2,000 employees, we kind of decided we're going to bring people back 3 days a week, but it'll be flexible, it'll be like the Apple model of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I think that's important for ideation and collaboration. But what's your opinion? How much risk are we going to run with, because half of our leaders are women, how much risk do you think we're going to run in terms of losing people falling off track on leadership by that decision of having people back in the office rather than more flexible approach?
Are the women being managed by women or men?
It varies.
Okay. Because if I understand your question right, you're saying once we get to this hybrid work life, are women going to fall off of their career trajectory, career track?
Or leave, work for companies that
That let them work.
Or leave, okay. Okay.
Yeah, my answer would be your risk is high, you know? I mean, I think there are a lot of opportunities out there today, and women are going to value that remote work experience in a greater way than maybe some of the male coworkers. And if they are having to choose, it may cause some of those women to go look elsewhere for leadership opportunities that will still honor that flexibility. I don't think that you have to say that women can work 100% at home, but understanding each individual and what their needs are and what will help them be successful and being flexible on that so there isn't some hard line. You have to come in 3 days a week is going to get you a lot more.
And you do get points for asking that question on behalf of the women in your country and just for being here. So I wish there were more like you. I think that we are now at an end. And if any of you would like to continue the conversation with these incredible bosses here or ask them if they have any job openings, because I wouldn't blame you. Thanks very much for coming.